Hey, it's episode 28 of the TV Junk Podcast, and this is Fallout. My name is Greg. Thanks for checking out the podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, TV Junk Podcast, and you can also send us any comments, suggestions for other shows that we can check out, tvjunkpodcast at gmail.com. A few episodes ago, I talked about a union so strong it was comparable to when Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage joined forces and became the mega powers. And once again, there was a union happening of mega powers like levels. It's TV junk and it's game junk because we're talking about a video game that's been turned into a television show. We've got Frank and we've got Sean. Fellas, how's it going?
It's going very well.
Hello. We did a union previously for The Last of Us, but this one is being led by TV Junk. So we're swapping roles each time, and it is great to be back on TV Junk.
I feel as though it was a TV junk pod that we just put on Game Junk. No, it was the other way around. I don't even remember. I feel like I have done this before with you guys.
Yeah, I don't
No?
remember this. I don't remember who hosted, I guess, is
Oh, I see.
the question. I'm not sure, but
Gotcha.
it was a great episode, whatever it
It
was.
was tremendous. So we're going to talk about Fallout, and this is, in fact, a video game, which I don't know if I'd ever heard of before. Um, so I need you guys, first of all, to tell me about this video game. One, is it popular? Is there more than one version? Are there like sequels? Because there's like a whole bunch of different Halos and stuff. And, um, are there popular characters? Like, because I've heard of Master Chief, but I hadn't heard of anybody from this video game. So tell me about this game.
Well, I mean, how far back do you want to go? So the original Fallout was what, the 90s, Frank? Is that right?
I believe 95 or 96.
And what platform would this have been on?
PC.
PlayStation?
No, PC. The first two were
This
only
was a
on
PC game
97.
So
on a
it was
personal computer.
yes,
All
there
right.
were kind of early RPGs, and then there was a big break where they didn't make any more, and then it got brought back on like all the rec recent consoles or the current consoles at the time for Fallout 3, and then there's been what, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, and
Fallout
Fallout
76.
76 is the most recent one. So yeah,
So
they're pretty
it
popular.
returned in 2008, and it's been pretty steady and popular since then. I would say it's a very popular video game franchise. And there's also a VR version of the game. I don't love the series. I've played halfway through, I would say, Fallout 3, quite a ways back on PlayStation 3. And, the Bethesda games are not my bag per se. I don't really get into them. I've tried Fallout 4, tried Skyrim. I do think the world is compelling, and I think it's a good property to create a show from, but the gameplay I'm not really crazy about personally.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not an expert either. I've put a few hours into both Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. So, there's probably some stuff in here that, maybe goes deep on the game lore that we're not aware of. But I mean, that being said, only playing a few hours of some of these games, there's locations and certainly, just things in the world that you recognize right off the bat.
I mean, aesthetically, it's borrowing heavily from the games, like music choices, this kind of fictional world, kind of frozen in time in something like the 50s. Is that right? Is
Yeah, I
that the
think so.
correct aesthetic? And music from that era, and the certain art and architecture, that vibe is all borrowed from the game. It's really accurate when it comes to weapons. I like all the pistols, the machine guns, the robots, using stim packs and all the stuff. Like all of that stuff is straight out of the game. Bottle caps as currency. So it is not straying too far from the game world at all. It's pretty like almost exactly the same from what I can tell, and actually does a service to the idea of the game, like playing in different ways. It has like special traits like strength, intelligence. I think what's do you know all the special? The special's an acronym. S is strength.
Don't
What's P,
recall.
Sean? No?
Don't
E's
know.
endurance. I's intelligence. C is charisma.
Is P like
L is
psionics or
luck.
something or psych something? I don't know.
We should anyway, I thought we could get them all, but not bad. Better than perception, and
The,
agility.
just Greg also
So
asked
anyway,
if there was characters that are known, and I think that's the one thing this show takes takes the world, but then tells an entirely new story with entirely new characters.
well, that's what I was
Got it.
kind of getting
Okay.
at. But what it does is part of the game is how you decide to play, creating a character, and investing in those special uh, properties for your character determines how you play the game. And what I think is really cool about the show is there's three main characters and they all play this world in different ways. It's like three different created characters that how they approach situations, how they interact with people is kind of reflective of the types of choices and gameplay choices you would make in a Fallout game. So I think they did a really good job of doing that. And also in terms of not necessarily exact characters, but the idea of the vaults is all borrowed from there. And even the Brotherhood, the factions are the same factions, I'm pretty sure. Especially the Brotherhood of Steel and some of the other ones. Like that robot armor is like straight out of the game. So the
Okay.
the Pit Boy, how they have that kind of TV on their wrist, that is also a huge part of the game, and it's kind of your user interface. And I thought they did an amazing job of integrating all that stuff.
And did you guys play like the 90s versions on the PC?
No,
No,
No, that wasn't. Okay.
I
All
recently
right.
played like half an hour of the first one after I watched the first episode, and I was a little bit lost. But it's all there. The world building is actually quite good and still pretty similar to the sequels in the first game, including the Brotherhood armor is on the art at some level, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. You answered some of my questions then. So Fallout is 8 episodes. It's on Prime, created by Graham Wagner and starring Ella Purnell, uh, Aaron Moten, Kyle MacLachlan, and Walton Goggins. The show depicts the aftermath of a war that occurred in 2077. So it's like an alternate history of Earth where advances in technology after World War II led to the emergence of like the society and subsequent like resource war. Um, Now I don't understand why the aesthetic is 50s. Is that just a choice from the game,
well,
considering the war happened in 2077, which was a
yeah,
lot later than 1950?
we were talking about this on Game Junk a few episodes ago because it is a little confusing. I think there's some debate over when the war happened. Like it says on Wikipedia 2077. I don't recall in the show if they explicitly say the year. But yeah, either way, like it would seem to imply that a nuke was dropped in the 50s and everything was just kind of frozen at that moment in time. But that generally is not what happened in the games or the TV show.
Yeah, to me, what it is, it's a fantasy world that's like it's kind of a parallel universe to Earth. It's like Earth in a lot of ways, or how Earth, how we know it. But it just is reinventing eras and creating its own rules in some degree. Like some of the healing stims and how people can heal body parts, like all of there's a big element of fiction, so it just feels a bit like a fantasy world similar to real life.
Okay. There was a scene in one of the episodes where one of the characters is in like a classroom and they're looking at a chalkboard that has like dates of significant moments that happened, and it does specifically say that 2077 was a key date. So there are three main characters that we follow throughout the most part. There's Lucy McLean. Um, she is someone that lives in one of these vaults, which is like an underground habitat for what turned out to be for uh, rich people when the original war happened, and people that could buy into living in the vaults. So she's like the daughter of one of the leaders of one of the vaults. And then there's
Well, just are we get into spoiler stuff, right?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's a little more than rich people though. It's like
Well,
pretty
I think
specific
people
that it's
could.
scientists.
Right. There are the people that created it, and there are people who could buy into it.
Yeah, so maybe rich people and scientists. Like the science element is a pretty big part of it, I think.
Well, scientists are pretty lucrative business, so they're probably rich people too.
Could be.
Um, so then we have another character named Maximus, who is a squire of the Brotherhood of Steel. They're the giant robot army guys, essentially. Um, and then we have Walton Goggins. Uh, he's he plays a character named Cooper Howard, and in 2077 he was like a Hollywood actor, and 200 years later he's still alive, and they kind of explain how he's still alive, but he's not the same man he was before. He's kind of I don't know, like rotted and transformed, like zombie like characteristics. He's referred to as he's a ghoul, but he still has all of his cognitive abilities, and he's able to speak and has memories and stuff. And uh, he's essentially well, originally he's like a bounty hunter, and then he kind of gets a mission throughout the series to find his family. So these are the three main characters that we're following, and they have stories, and there are some side characters that we meet as well, and a lot of guest stars. I was surprised at how many um, guest stars they had, where they cast uh, people that I normally wouldn't associate with like a post-apocalyptic sci-fi type series. Like Chris Parnell is in this, and Fred Armisen is in this, and Michael Rappaport, and and Matt Berry is also in it as well as one of these guest roles. So they kind of delve into other genres of film and TV that some of these actors are more known for and kind of bring them in. So, and most of these appearances are quite a surprise because I didn't know any of these people uh, were in were in the show at all. So the movie the series also jumps back through time. So there's lots of stuff set in 2077 before the original bomb is dropped, and then there's stuff that's 200 years later. Um, I think the year is like 2296 or something like that, which is where the Brotherhood of Steel are and where the people are living in the vault. And so I will just kind of go through some of the episodes and talk about some of the main points that happen in each one. So the first episode, we get like the visual of the nuclear assault, like the bomb going off in Los Angeles with Cooper Howard, who was Walton Goggins' character, and his family. They're at like some sort of a birthday party, and yeah, you kind of get the bomb uh, dropping, and then shortly after that, it's like it flashes 219 years later or something like that, and we get to meet Lucy McLean, who's like this chipper, happy-go-lucky girl in her, I don't know, mid-20s, you'd say. She says things like okie dokie, and like everything is super happy of people living in the vault, and they have farms, and it's very like Leave It to Beaver 1950s esque, people like smiling and waving hello and stuff like that, and that's kind of the community that's living in Vault 33. So she wants to get married, and what they usually do is they do like these arranged marriages from somebody from a different vault. So they have this big wedding where she's matched up with this dude, and it turns out these were people actually who are from the surface, and their idea was to come in and capture her father, who is played by Colin McLaughlin. And there's like a big fight. A lot of people die. And yeah, so Colin McLaughlin's character gets kidnapped, and Lucy decides that she wants to go save him because she was spared by him, and she wants to go out there and find him and bring him back. So that's kind of her story in the first episode. That's how we get introduced to her. And then um, Maximus, his character, he's part of the army and the Brotherhood of Steel. And through some different ways, he ends up getting promoted to the role of squire, and he joins Knight Titus, like one of the people who's in one of the big armor suits. And they're looking for a member of what they call the enclave, which is what they call the group of people that are living on the outside that are causing a lot of problems and disrupting things. And then at the very end of the episode, that's when we're introduced to the future version of Walton Goggins' character, who they call the Ghoul. And then their stories kind of branch out after the first episode. So a lot of information, a lot of character introductions in the first episode. But I thought I think it was the longest episode of the series as well. But I thought it flowed really well. I think they took their time really introducing these three characters, and we really had a good idea of who they are and what they are about, and it kind of set us forward for the rest of the series. So just based on all that stuff in the first episode, Frank, give me your first impressions.
Well, I was seriously doubting this show from what I saw in the trailers. And in the first episode, I thought like it was very well written. The the mystery of when the vault gets, there's a marriage ceremony that I thought was really well done. Even like world building stuff, like the wedding dress being, having one wedding dress for the vault that gets passed down, they sign their name. I thought they did a lot of good stuff of establishing what life is like in the vault, and some like comedy stuff with like having sex with your cousins and all these other things that like it starts to lean into some dark humor, which I think is a strength of the show at times. And I thought it looked amazing. What I did not get from the original trailers, maybe it was blurring in my mind with Halo, which I find looks very televisual. I didn't think it looked good in the trailer, but when I watched the first show, I was really surprised with how good the cinematography is. Like, I think it looks amazing. And I don't know a lot about it, but it feels like Jonathan Nolan said, just use Wally Pfister's lenses from like Prestige, Inception era Christopher Nolan movies, like just very clean, straightforward photography, which I think looks amazing. It's my favorite part about this show. I think it's my, out of any current show on TV, it's not over processed and it looks really good, especially when there's no special effects. I think when they're out in the wasteland or just in certain moments, it looks so good. And I love the three main characters. I think all three main characters are very interesting, compelling, different, complex. Like, especially by the end of the series or the season, Lucy has this kind of transformation by getting used to what the real world is like outside of the vault, and she becomes much more complex by the end. Maximus has a scene in the first episode where something happens to his friend and they think he did it, and he says, well, I wanted it to happen. So like they're not just kind of straightforward characters to me. And my favorite character by far is the Ghoul, Walton Goggins, although it's close. Lucy's pretty good as well, but he is having both sides of pre Fallout nukes and the Ghoul version. I think he like is so good on screen. The writing for his character is amazing, and I just think they're very entertaining, especially in the first episode. I think the first episode is the best episode by far, with the last one being probably next in line for me. But you know, I also was thinking in the first episode, it was going to be more about just them traveling through this world or experiencing the world of Fallout. But as the series goes on, it gets more about like the political implications and what was happening to create this world. which I didn't dislike. I just found it less interesting. I was kind of hoping this was going to be more of a almost Mandalorian of each episode had a different kind of, oh, what's happening in the wasteland this episode, where there is some elements of that, but it more is just like a big overarching story, kind of similar to season one of like Westworld, which a lot of the people worked on, I think. So I really liked it, but I loved episode one.
Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I agree that towards the end, it kind of lost a little bit of momentum for me, but the first two episodes I thought were really strong. I will say the ghoul in the first episode, I was like not 100% sold on him. Maybe because he gets the least amount of screen time in that first episode, but it just felt like a character. I was like, I've kind of seen this before, and I don't know, something about that just didn't, but the more it went on, I really grew to love that character. And I do like both Lucy and Maximus as well. I think there's something about, it's a show about, this post-apocalyptic world, and everybody's trying to kill everybody else because you're just trying to survive. But the two main characters you're following are these sort of like goody two-shoes uh kind of naive characters that you kind of get behind because they're not like everybody else. So I think that's important, and I think that really helps. And obviously, like Lucy coming from the vault and then into the to the surface world, the kind of contrast between that. There's a lot of humor from that, and it was obviously a good way to introduce the whole kind of world to you. But yeah, first episode was great. I thought for me it actually maybe peaked with episode two or three, but yeah, started off really, really strong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it peaked at two for me as well.
yeah, very strong start. Where they really took their time introducing these characters, and I felt there's a lot of shows that don't really spend enough time with character development, or they expect people to know the history of some of these characters. It happens a lot of these Marvel shows and a lot of the Star Wars shows. Speaking of Star Wars, the character of the Ghoul reminded me a lot of a character named Cad Bane in the Star
Yeah,
Wars universe.
exactly. Yeah.
I think he was in the most recent season of The Mandalorian, or Boba Fett, one of those. But very, Western motif, cowboy hat, leather, holster, leather saddlebag or whatever, and just had that same feel of that character attitude as well. I don't know which one came first, but definitely a lot of influence either way with that character, I felt. So in the second episode, we're introduced to this doctor, and this doctor becomes kind of a key part of the series. Well, part of him becomes a key part in this series. And he there's a scene where he injects something into his neck um, um, when he's fleeing this facility with his dog sidekick. Um, now, I started this episode about 2 minutes into it because anytime that I see a trailer of a show or a movie that features an animal prominently, I go to my trusty website, doesthedogdie.com, and I found that there's something very upsetting that happens at the very beginning of episode two, which I did not want to see, which I skipped past. Disappointed I didn't get a friendly warning.
Well, I mean, it's a little. I'm kind of curious how the website handled that.
Well, it explained what happens to the puppy,
Okay.
so I just kind of
Oh, you're
skipped
talking
past
about
that.
the incinerator stuff.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
I thought you were talking
So
about the actual CX.
no, 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 no.
I forgot
But
about the incinerator thing.
yeah.
To be
So
honest, the first time I watched it, I didn't even realize it was puppies until after.
oh, really?
Yeah, it was like I was like I didn't even know what I was looking at first.
But so earlier on in this episode, the doctor encounters Lucy in the real world for the first time, um, and he kind of tells her that she doesn't really belong here. There's a lot. Uh, it's a lot different than what she expect. He describes cockroaches and we get to see a cockroach, which is like the size of a small dog. I thought the cockroaches looked super disgusting, and Frank, you have something to say
Oh,
about the
just
look of the
I
cockroach?
believe, yeah, like those are from the game. They're called rad roaches. They're like one of
Okay,
the main enemies. I think it's the first enemy you encounter in the first Fallout game as well. And they're kind of like a known thing. And all of the creatures, I think for the most part, definitely the gulper, I'm
right.
pretty sure the bear, all of those creatures are from the video game series.
Okay.
And I don't think I mentioned the ghouls are also part of the video game as well.
Rad roaches.
Yeah.
Is that like so that was like a mid 90s thing, like rad,
No,
like
like uh
skateboarding and stuff like that?
radiation roaches.
Oh, okay. So not rad as in like super cool, which was a very 90s thing. Um, yeah, so I was very excited to see these cockroaches. I thought they looked very cool. Um, Maximus gets paired up with Titus, and they start their search. Turns out they're looking for this doctor as well. They need information from him, um, and they get attacked by I don't know. There was something wrong with the bear. This bear, I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it was just from the nuclear fallout. It had mutated a little bit, and it beats the shit out of Knight Titus, which is Michael Rappaport inside. We don't find out till later. Did you know that he was in this show?
No, I thought it was kind of interesting how like the voice is muffled, right? So you don't really
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really like that design of the Brotherhood of Steel stuff where the voice just is processed and
They
then
all sound the same, no
like
matter who's
taking
in the
off
suit.
a helmet, he is like this cowardly guy that's just like yelling obscenities and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah. That you
So
get some good humor too from the voice effects on those suits.
and it's interesting in a later episode when Maximus's character, now that you're familiar with like how he talks, like the character kind of comes through in the voice, but
right.
it's just I think it's a cool idea how they handle the voices.
But so Titus or Michael Rappaport, he was wounded, and he's been an asshole the entire time to Maximus, and he's yelling at Maximus to get him the stim pack to heal his wounds. And this is where we get a little bit more about this character development for Maximus, where from the first episode when we see him get beat up by a group of guys, and then he reluctantly takes on the role that his friend lost to be Squire, to get abused by Michael Rappaport and being sent in without armor to check this cave to see what's in it before they get attacked by the bear. And he chooses to let Titus just bleed out and die, which was interesting to me because you know that's not the type of character that we were introduced in the first episode and the beginning of and earlier on, like who would make that kind of a choice. He seemed to be more of a timid guy where he just continually just takes the abuse. um so that was kind of interesting how his kind of character changed just a little bit, or we were just introduced to more of it, of the type of person that he is. What did you think about that, Sean? Just like the decision to have, that character just let the knight bleed out and die.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I think there's so the thing I was reminded of with the Maximus character, not quite to this extent, but there was a character in Game of Thrones. I cannot remember his name now, but there was a character who just constantly gets shit on and beat, and like horrible things keep happening, and all you want is to see some redemption for this guy. And you get a bit of that with him. Like it's not quite that bad, but like there, even after he gets the suit, there's still things that happen to him that are kind of like he gets embarrassed or one-upped or whatever, and you just kind of want to see him come through. So in that moment, I was definitely rooting for him.
I find that there aren't too many actors who can swear and yell and berate people, um, like Michael Rappaport can.
I mean, he
And
did a
like,
great job berating Frank in his
that's
cameo.
true.
So
And he doesn't like he doesn't. It's like a slight level above his regular speaking voice. Like he's never yelling, but it's very it's just a very forceful way of speaking, and he can call somebody like a fucking idiot so well, and I did enjoy that. I'm sure you did as well, Frank. It brought back good memories, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. The whole that stuff with the knight I thought was in the original trailers. I didn't like the look of the Brotherhood armor, but I actually think they pull it off really well. I think the sound design and all of that stuff really sells it. And it still moments looks a little like television costumey, but it's way better than it should. I feel that way about the weapons, everything. You can tell it's like a television prop, but it's pretty convincing.
Yes. Um, so Lucy, she makes her way to a larger populated area that they refer to as Philly. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be what was left of Philadelphia, but I kind of thought they were in Los Angeles earlier.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think.
No. Um, but so she encounters this doctor again who is trying to arrange safe passage to a character named Moldaver, um, who uh, I think at this point we know that this is the character from episode one that kidnapped her father. I think we
Yeah.
already know that at this point. And so she realizes that that's where she wants to go to. But then uh, the bounty hunter, the ghoul, shows up because he is also after this doctor because all the bounty hunters are looking for him as well. And so there's a big gunfight. Um, the doctor gets his foot shot off in a pretty gruesome scene, which I did enjoy the special effects on that. And then Maximus shows up and he kind of, I guess, saves the day, and he starts a battle with the ghoul, which allows Lucy to escape with the doctor, um, and they're on their way to find Moldaver because he has information that he's got to get to her. Unfortunately, the dog does get attacked and is left behind, and I was furious because I didn't there wasn't too much about that on this website. Um, but then the ghoul heals the dog and kind of brings him back to life, and everybody is super happy at that point. Well, I was while watching it. And so Lucy gets to a point with the doctor, and he kind of says that he can't go on, and she needs to get the information to Moldaver, and um, so she's like, "Well, then, we got to go." And he said, "I'm not going anywhere. I've already taken some cyanide. I'm going to die. The only thing you need is to take my head." And so she's left to take his head off with a power saw, and she decides that she's going to bring the head to Moldaver in exchange to free her father, Hank, who she assumes is being held captive. And that's kind of how we wrap up with episode two. Another strong episode. Again, like developing more of the characters. Lucy starts to lose a bit of that happy-go-lucky stuff that she had in the first episode. She does fight a little bit in this episode. She does cut the guy's head off at the end of the episode, and so we start to see all these changes in some of the main characters. But again, like another strong episode. And Sean, you said this was a strong one as well. Anything that speaks out in this episode that you really liked?
Yeah, I mean, the shootout was fun, having some action for sure. The way that the three main characters and paths all kind of cross at this point, like I thought we were gonna have to wait the whole season for that to happen, but it happens pretty early on. And I liked the town that they're in, sort of like that. You can see how they interact with Lucy, and they're kind of talking about vaulties and making fun of the fact that they don't really know what's going on and they can't really fend for themselves up here on the surface. And there's a bit of a resentment there, like that I thought was kind of interesting. Just yeah, a lot of stuff going on, and obviously the stuff happening with Titus and Maximus was interesting as well. Uh, Michael Emerson, I like the casting of him, just giving some Lost vibes through his
As the doctor?
presence. Yeah,
Now,
and
while we're on that, we don't really know by the end of the season what the Enclave is, right?
I don't think so. I mean,
I just assumed it was. I thought it was the name of the place where um, Moldaver is held up. That is, or is that not what that's called?
I don't think so because
Or
he
is it her
flees.
faction or group?
Oh,
I don't think so. Like, because she wants the technology. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that part. That he left. Like, why would he leave her at that point if he develops cold fusion? Like, maybe that's the part that's not clear. Either way, like why he's escaping with the tech, or I'm forgetting some aspect of that.
well,
Like,
she's not there. He's going to where she is, so he's taking the tech to her.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, but he starts in the Enclave.
Oh, so maybe that's the Enclave is where the Brotherhood of Steel is, I believe. Then that's the name of their base. Or is the ship? Maybe I don't know.
Like
There
it's
is a
something
big
else.
giant
I feel like
spaceship.
it's some other entity that we don't really know about yet, but I could be wrong. Uh, but I love how this episode starts to establish this head changing hands. Uh, there's a tracker, so this throughout the episode, the head is always like getting swapped to someone else, and even towards the end of the season, I love like the one kiss where the two heads kiss. They each have a decapitated head, and those kiss beside it. I thought there was lots of cool stuff like that, and how the different characters' paths crisscross in different ways is kind of a theme with the show, including sub characters like the weird guy who has sex with chickens and has the serums and all that stuff. He shows up a
Right.
bunch of times. If I was going to criticize the show, it does seem like the world is pretty small for
Yes.
like this huge expansive wasteland. They're always running into the same people, which seems a little weird to me. Uh, but the town of Philly, that's really similar to like the first towns you go into. I think Megaton in Fallout 3. Like just how it looks is definitely an homage to the series, or just borrowing from the design of the series, which I think still works in this. But I don't know if this is a part of the game, but the foot thing that attaches to the decapitated foot with the teeth and the blood pouring out and then attaching a makeshift foot, I loved that. That's probably where the show peaked for me. Like this gross technology that allows people to walk with weird robot feet, and I'm like, I just want more of this type of stuff. And
There was a lot of gruesome feet stuff in this
yeah,
series.
Yeah.
and even when I can't remember if it's this episode or the next where that serum guy says, "I've got stuff for your feet too." That'll
Yeah,
fix your
yeah.
feet, and it's like it's funny. Like obviously he can't fix someone's feet, but then in a later episode he does fix someone's feet with a serum. So he wasn't even lying. You think he's just lying, being a traveling salesman at that point, but it's a callback that he was telling the truth that he could fix your feet then. So I think there's lots of like the use of callbacks and running gags. I think is really strong in the show overall. I think it's a really well written show, and it episode 2 sets the stage for all of that stuff, but I don't think it quite hits in the same way episode 2 hits for the rest of the
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, I agree. Like although I did enjoy the rest of the episodes, but I think it was great at the beginning and really great at the end, and decent throughout the middle. Um, so at this point, Maximus is, he's discarded Michael Rappaport's body, and now he's taken over the armor himself. He kind of assumes the identity and kind of gets in contact with the Brotherhood, and they decide to send him out a new squire. So now he has to figure out how is he going to make sure that no one realizes that he's now the one in the suit as opposed to the knight that originally was in there, because he does tell them that Maximus is dead, and he pretends to be Titus. Um, we're also introduced to the Gulper for the first time, which I thought looked super cool. Um, the Gulper is like a deranged giant fish type creature
Definitely
that
borrowing
attack.
from like an axolotl vibe, if you've ever seen
Okay,
axolotl, but not quite the same. And it does look a bit different than what it looks like in the show, in the game.
the
Yeah.
game looks different than it is in the show. Okay, do you think it looks better in the show or in the game?
Uh, Probably the show, but it's a lot
Okay,
bigger and it's a part of a huge set piece in the show, so it's got a bit different functionality.
So in the scuffle with the gulper, although Lucy escapes, it does swallow the head, and so now the head is in this giant uh, gulper. At this point, the ghoul arrives. He wants the head. She says that she doesn't have it anymore, and then he kind of deduces everything that has happened, and he figures out that the head is inside the gulper, and decides to use Lucy as bait to try to get it. And he kind of sets her up in this crank over the water to try to get the gulper uh, to get him. They do catch the gulper, they do kill it, and they do get the head back. But in the scuffle, we see that these vials are broken, and we're kind of introduced of how um, the ghoul has been alive for over 200 years. He uses these vials of things to keep himself from turning completely into a mindless creature or just in fact dying. So he needs to have these things. And so now he needs to get more of these. And they set off on a separate mission where he's planning on trading Lucy for more of these vials. So one of the new squire shows up, and the new squire is one of the squires that was a piece of shit towards Maximus in the first episode, the one who was kind of leading the charge to get him beat up. And so now he's paired up with Maximus, and so they track the head to the gulper, and now they have what they need to continue on to I guess their orders were just to not just to get the scientist, and since the scientist is dead, their orders are just to contain the head. So now they have that, and that is part of their mission. And they take custody of the dog, who was once again left behind, which was a theme of this series, which was super upsetting. That this poor dog is always being left behind and ends up picking up with somebody else. Very reminiscent of Canadian television sensation, The Littlest Hobo.
Yes.
Um, so
You do
I don't know. Go ahead.
in Fallout 4 early on, you do meet up with a dog that looks like this, and that does get the name Dog Meat through, I don't know, one of the characters refers to him as Dog Meat, and then from then on his little name tag changes in the game. So clearly a callback to that, but
It's a companion, right? Doesn't the dog, aren't they
yeah,
with you the whole game?
yeah.
Yes. Um, in Philly, there were some vendors who were selling, in fact, dog meat and iguana meat, which you could get on a stick, um, which I'm sure is probably delicious. I've never tried iguana, but I'm sure it's just
And they
fine.
make ass jerky later from
They do get into doing that, which was also upsetting. Um, so at the end of this episode, we kind of go back to Vault 33, which is where where Lucy had lived before, and they're still recovering, and they've they do have some of the invaders held captive, which they are, feeding very well with like delicious meals and desserts, because these are, you know, nice people who have captured these guys and are taking some pretty good care of them. But this is kind of where we start to get a little bit more out of Norm. Norm is Lucy's brother and Cal McLaughlin's son, and he was kind of left behind. He's a bit of a scrawny guy, and was kind of placed in like a hiding spot during the fight during the wedding, and so he thinks that everybody should be executed for murder, but he's kind of rebuffed and voted down. So the people who are now running Vault 33 again, they want to try to rehabilitate them, and people are stepping up saying, "I could teach him calculus, and I could teach him Shakespeare," and
maybe
just
not
like this.
Shakespeare. That might be a bit too advanced. Someone says,
Right.
maybe too
Yeah, that was
advanced.
kind of the joke. But just like this, again, this Leave It to Beaver type attitude where super friendly, and even though these people just came in and tried to murder all of them, they're giving them delicious looking Jello cake, um, which was also a running theme to this, where Jello cake was pretty popular. And then at the end of the episode, we see that back in 2077, Cooper Howard, before he became, the ghoul, as when he was still an actor, he becomes the spokesman for Vault Tech, which turns out to be the vaults where everybody is living 200 years in the future. So he has this tie to the vault technology back in 2077. And 200 years later, he is kind of brought back into this whole Vault Tech thing with his, capture of Lucy, who was living in one of these vaults. And that story kind of starts to develop when we start to learn um, little bits of things of his involvement with Vault-Tec before the bomb went off. Um, this was, I think, this wasn't one of the longer episodes. There was one episode that was only like 40 minutes. I can't remember which one it was, but this one moved kind of fast, and we jumped from place to place, and again, kind of just stuck with um, the main characters. But again, like this one didn't have the same feel for me as the first two episodes. Still good, but again, not as exciting and interesting as the first two episodes. Frank, what were your thoughts on this episode? We got introductions to the Gulper and some other cool stuff, but
Yeah, I like the Gulper stuff. I thought it was pretty good. The This one is more about the ghoul to me. I think his dialogue when he's with Lucy is pretty good. This and episode 4 were both 40-ish minutes. They're shorter, and it's getting into the stuff with the vaults and all the different vaults, which the intricacies and plots of between vault 33, 32, and 31, I did not find all that great, and kind of was spending too much time with that stuff. It's required for some reveals later on in the show, but anytime we would go back to the vaults, I'm like, don't. I guess I liked it as a change up visually. I was kind of getting sick of the wasteland sometimes, but what's happening in the vaults is not all that compelling to me. So,
well,
I agree.
especially with the stuff that's happening in Vault 32 with like the dead plants and the dead people, none of that really has anything to do with 33 or 31. Like they could have got the exact same area that they did later on in the series without having to involve a lot of that 32 stuff.
Yeah, I think what that is more, I think it is a good way. It's more about forcing Lucy out into the world, like it kickstarts the whole thing. But it's also like the idea of the raiders is a big part of the Fallout series as well. So the raiders that raid vaults and different buildings. So that was kind of a call out to the game, which I thought was okay. But it's more the politics and the like. There's a vote for overseer in the vault, and I'm like, I don't really care about this stuff.
Sean, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, so in this episode, I really like, again, the continuing sort of Maximus having to continually pretend to be Knight Titus, and sort of the tension there, I think is good. The starting of the Vault conspiracy stuff, it's interesting because there's that other show on Apple TV called Silo, which is about people living in underground vaults. And it is more of like a mystery thriller thing. And I like that show a fair bit, but I I just wasn't that interested in the conspiracy stuff here in Fallout. Maybe just because I had already seen that, um, but yeah, I mean, I did like the flashback stuff with Cooper, and I guess just in terms of like the first few episodes being stronger maybe than the rest, it is interesting. Jonathan Nolan directed the first three. I don't know if that's a factor or if they just happen to be, the strongest from a story standpoint.
Um, Episode 4 is a very like Norm and Lucy heavy episode. Um, we start with Norm and one of the other characters named Chet. They kind of take off and kind of start investigating what happened in Vault 32. And they discover that everybody that had been in 32 died a couple years earlier because it's just all these decomposed bodies, and it looks like there was some sort of a revolt, and people were tied up, and there was things written in blood on the walls, and all the crops were destroyed, and all the things inside of Vault 32 were all damaged and stuff. And Norm also learns that um, the the invaders from episode one, they got into the vault to begin with from the outside. So the door had been opened by one of the Pip Boys, and he finds out that the Pip Boy that opened the door to lead the invaders in was belonging to his mother. So there's a bit of a mystery around there. And with the ghoul and Lucy, um, she tries to get away from him, and they get into a bit of a fight. And she bites off one of his fingers, and then he just cuts off one of hers, which I thought was a pretty cool scene. Just kind of, what you do to me, I'm going to do to you, and it kind of. Uh,
Well, that's
uh,
her thing too, right? The
well,
goal.
that's what I mean. It kind of plays
Mother.
off of the golden rule, which is something that she had spouted a whole bunch of times. You do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So that's what he decides to do and cuts off her finger. So his idea is to sell her uh, to people who want to harvest her organs in exchange for 60 of these vials to help keep him alive. But he passes out before he can make the exchange. But she goes into the building anyway and has a conversation with a robot named Snip Snip, and sees some of these people running this facility, and she gets led in to have her organs cut out. She fights back and gets away, starts a bit of a revolt and frees all of these ghouls. Most of them are similar to um, Walton Goggins, where they have full cognitive abilities and they're just like deformed looking people and they take off. But then there's a couple other ones that are more zombie like, and they come and they kill everybody that's in there. And Lisa is actually Lisa Lucy is like forced to kill for the first time herself. Some more character development for her. And on her way out of the facility, she gives um, Walton Goggins, who's still passed out and dying, a bunch of the vials, and kind of leaves him there. And she continues off in her quest herself. This one, I think, was one of the shorter episodes. We don't get much. We get a little bit of the mystery of the vaults. Again, a heavy Lucy episode, and the ghoul as well. Sean, what were your thoughts on episode 4?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have super clear memories of everything that happened in it, but like
Yeah.
I do like that moment at the end where she saves him, which at the time I was kind of like, I don't know, like that's seems pretty stupid. But I think it plays into what happens at the end of the season where it seems like he kind of owes her something now, and they're kind of potentially moving forward going to be working together. Um so it
Well,
kind of
she
sets that
kind of
up.
does it to like prove a point. I think she says to him, I may, um, I think she said,
She's
I may end up looking like you, but I will never be like you, or something like that.
Yeah, like basically sticking to her principles, which,
Right.
again, that's one of the reasons we like her as a character compared to everybody else in this wasteland. So yeah, I like that.
And Frank, anything to add there?
Yeah, this episode was pretty good. I like the robot. I thought it was that's from the game as well, and I thought it was pretty well written and like the interactions there, but overall good episode. This is where the show started to I was wondering, like, I was hyping this show up pretty hard. Am I going to have to be eating my words here by the time we get to episode 8? And thankfully it bounced back a bit, but yeah, it was fine.
I believe Matt Berry was the voice of Snip Snip.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yes. Because
So,
you find that out later.
right. Yes, you do find that out later. Um, so episode 5 had one of the most uh, confusing story pieces that I felt. Um, like all this time, Maximus, he knows that this Thaddeus guy has never been his friend. He's always been an asshole to him. So Maximus has been taking a bit of pleasure in kind of pushing Thaddeus around, like he brands him, and makes him clean his cod piece and things like that, and it just kind of gets his revenge. And then he tells him who he is, which I didn't understand his motivation to do that. at all. Like he should have easily had the foresight that Thaddeus would not be okay with him being the one in the armor when he would probably prefer to be it himself, which causes a whole bunch of problems. Um, First of all, Thaddeus gets his foot just completely crushed, but he also steals the power core to the suit, which in turn kind of just traps Maximus in this suit with no way to get himself out of it. And I didn't really understand how he possibly could have been motivated to tell him the truth.
Well,
Sure, they've had a couple of laughs and they're sitting by the fire together, but it just seemed like a completely idiotic move on his part.
well, at some point, it's going to get revealed. Like he's been lying the whole time about
Right,
who he is, even when he called, and he wants to have the. I think the reason he tells him is because he wants to fix the communicator so that they can communicate back what's going on because he says his is broken, which he broke. So I
right.
think at some point he's going to report back to base and get more people. So he's going to get figured out eventually. So at some point it's going to be revealed. So I think he just chooses that moment to come clean because it seems like they're kind of cool at that point.
Yeah, I think he's like starting to feel like he has the upper hand on this guy, and he's like kind of feeling more confident. And then, of
I
course,
don't think that's it. It's they're kind of bonding. It's
well, yeah, I guess that too. But that's the thing. Like he wants to think that he's got this guy on his side and that he's, you know, kind of in with the cool crowd finally. But
there's
you
also a
know,
whole scene where Johnny Pemberton, the squire, is saying like he used to be exactly like Maximus. Everyone used to beat him up and tease him, so he was just glad to have like that moved on. And there's like some back and forth empathy there, even though he's still like fucking with him a bit. But I think there's more going on than just, you know, this guy was always a jerk and now he's decided to tell him.
Right, yeah. Um, so Thaddeus takes the head and the dog follows him and they kind of leave Maximus behind. Um, so the following morning, um, the cockroaches start swarming him inside, and Maximus is having this panic attack, and then they kind of get shot off, and it's revealed to be Lucy. And again, these characters keep just running into each other over and over again in the nick of time. So she helps Maximus, and they kind of agree to work together to get the head back because uh, you know Lucy can track it, and Maximus knows what Thaddeus looks like, and so they can go get the head back and kind of continue the quest that they had started. And they come across this area called Shady Sands, which is the town that Maximus, as a little boy, lived in, and he survived the nuclear explosion that happened at Shady Sands. That it was kind of just melted to the ground. We learn more about Shady Sands later on, but this was like a little community that had formed after the original bomb of 2077 had gone off, and people who had survived it had started to, kind of continue and live and somewhat begin to thrive once again. But then
Oh,
they've come across now the remnants of what has been left over after a separate attack on that city. Frank, you were about to say
well,
something?
there's definitely this element of, at least I was wondering the whole time. We kind of get a sense why the ghoul has been able to live for 200 years.
Right.
And, I think there's some element of the game of like how much time has actually passed from what I remember from Fallout 3. But like, is it a lie that you're not sure as a viewer, how is this character alive? They're only like in their 20s probably, but they were alive for a city that was around after when the vaults closed up. And you're at this point in the show, you're still wondering what's going on here in terms of time and people being able to live so long, or are they clones? Or, there's still a lot of mystery about the nature of lives and time at this point in the show.
Yeah, I think your best bet is that it was 20 years ago that something happened to Shady Sands, and that's where we are first introduced as Maximus as a little boy inside this refrigerator. Um, but
little
just
Indiana
based on their
Jones
their
tribute
ages,
there.
which
Little Indiana Jones
Indiana
tribute there.
Jones from Crystal.
Crystal
What's it
Skull.
called? Crystal Skull. That's right. Um, so as they continue on in their little journey, they come across a couple of people that turn out to be fiends that eat people, and Maximus is shot in the arm, and they go to this hospital to try to dig up some medical supplies, and they end up. Uh, um, I don't know if they're not really kidnapped, but I don't know if they fall through a shaft or whatever, or they're sucked down an elevator shaft to vault number 4. And that's kind of where we're left off with them. And then back in vault 33, there's a new person in charge after Kyle McLaughlin's been gone. And Norm discovers that every person that over the last 200 years that's been in charge of Vault 33 has been someone that came from Vault 31, and that kind of deepens this mystery because the new leader um, was also from Vault 31, played by Leslie. What's that actress name? Leslie. She was a very famous actress in the 70s. Leslie Uggams. Um, and so she wins this vote to become the new leader of Vault 33. And Norm is super suspicious of her, and she's kind of super suspicious of him. And she decides that um, they're going to repurpose Vault 32 and split everybody up from 33 into those two vaults. And when Norm goes back there, he has seen that all the destruction, all the death, all the damage, all the blood, everything had been cleaned up like it was never there. And so now we get more of Frank's favorite part of the show, the mystery of the vaults.
Well, when we find out later, once we know what the vaults, like who created the vaults, how you get
Right.
them, like that's in a later episode. And I guess maybe I'm missing something. I thought this was all going to lead to what the nature of a Vault 33 is. Because when you late in a future episode, you see them planning like, well, each vault can decide how
Right.
they can
Right.
make a case for their scientific experiment as to what will create the best reintegration into society kind of idea, right? So I kept thinking the twist was going to be what's the experiment at Vault 33? Like what's their version? And I think it just boils down to it's like a triangle of vaults 31, 32, 33 that they're using to like get breeding diversity by picking people from different vaults, and that's I think their plan for these 3 vaults. Is that where everyone else ended up with this?
Yeah, I think so. It felt like that's where um um it turns out we find later that that's the vault where all of the people who uh perpetrated the whole idea back in 2077, like Cooper's wife was one of the heads of Vault Tech, which had bought up all of these other tech companies, and they were going to let all the different tech companies. Um, I just totally put my hand right in front of the camera. Kind of control their own what they wanted to do with them, really kind of give them the freedom to that. And I think that this was like the main uh, like top tier vaults where ideally they were just going to live peacefully, interchanging people in those 3
Yeah,
different vaults and
but it's like
farm and
one
just
is using these 2 like almost child vaults and
yes.
like using them selectively to do stuff. I guess that's the whole idea. It's like a triple connected vault where all the other ones kind of exist on their own. Is that?
That's kind of what I got out of it. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess like I still feel like there's something else yet to be revealed, maybe, but generally that's what I seem to be. And what you were saying, just like it seemed like more elite people were in these vaults potentially, but
Well, that's across the board. That's all vaults, right? It's just
I guess
each
so,
vault
yeah.
was allowed to pick how they tried to be the best vault or the ideal like
But I don't think,
society to put back once it's clear up on the
but
surface.
but do the vault residents know which vault they're signing up for? I don't think so.
No, not 200 years later, but I guess this is where I'm unclear. Is Vault 31 it seems weird that they would pick Vault 31 that is like in charge of all the other vaults, like because they can obviously they figured out ways by the end of the season that they can live for 200 years through those. I'm That's one thing I don't really understand by the end of the season, how like they don't reverse age. I thought that was going to be connected to the ghoul's kind of healing substance, but once they take that substance, they start to become a ghoul. So I don't think that's it either. So I still have a lot of questions as to how they live for 200 years and don't age that much.
But
But
isn't this like, well, so I don't know. Here it says that the Vault Tech employees are cryogenically frozen
Yeah.
that doesn't
in,
reverse your age. And when you're outside of the vault, like how McLaughlin, like how long are you outside the vault before you go back in? The cryogenic freezing. Like
right.
how you'd have to pick what years, which seems what's kind of going on there. But
Yeah, like
McLaughlin would have been alive since, I presume, since Lucy was born.
right. So he had been the overseer there for, I don't know, like 30 some odd years or something like that. Because that's kind of how much he really had aged uh physically.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, I just kind of felt it was like a suspended animation type thing, and they were just kind of let out when they needed somebody new to come over. Since they had no contact between the other vaults, none of the people would be any the wiser that what was going on in 31, and that they would
So,
really only know what was happening in 33.
so you get the sense when they get pulled out of well, they say you can go back into the tube, right?
I
So
think they said you can,
tell
yes.
Norm you should go back into or
Right.
into your
Yeah.
dad. So, um, yeah, I'm not really sure about that, but again, it gets more into conspiracies and what happened in the world. And I'm just kind of from this episode till episode 7, I'm kind of like not that into the show.
Yeah, like I was I was a little confused with what was going on in the next episode as well, with all the happenings in vault number 4, which is where Lucy and Maximus end up. Like Maximus is loving the food and the showers and stuff, and he's kind of oblivious to everything that's going on. But Lucy is having these interactions with um, this one character named Birdie, who was a Shady Sand survivor, and also the Overseer number 4, who was played by Chris Parnell, who has one eye in the center of his head, which really kind of freaked me out as I was watching it. Um,
Yeah,
but
I
they kind of
agree.
go ahead.
I did not like that for I think
No, no, I didn't like
Cyclops
it either.
characters in the game. I'm not 100% sure, but the only thing I liked about this episode is that it's like a flip where Maximus, who's lived on the surface, is now seeing how nice
Right.
it is in a vault, and Lucy seeing what's wrong about the vaults or what's off about them. So there's an interesting juxtaposition there. But other than that, I'm like the idea that this vault has kind of genetics experiments and all that stuff.
Yeah, like I didn't quite understand why so many people had mutated. Um,
You see the pregnancy, like the almost water birthing thing, right? Where the
with
creatures.
all the fish came
Yeah,
out.
I
Yeah.
thought that was like a creepy, effective visual. Like I thought that was neat, but I don't know. I just, again, not that invested in this stuff.
No, and like I didn't quite understand why so many had all these um, different defects. Like Chris Parnell's character said that, his family had been there for 5 generations. Does that mean that 5 generations ago they were experimented on, and now this is they're just like these Cyclops creatures, and one other person had like shiny blue eyes and like these things dangling from her chin, like I don't know if they were like loose gills or something, but
The two
one
nose,
guy
yeah.
had a nose on his forehead, which was super strange. I guess they just ran out of special effects makeup. We need one more. Just put a nose on this guy's forehead, and that's how he's gonna look. Um, so yeah, Lucy just kind of kept getting creeped out by the how some of the people looked, and they had some strange uh practices at night where they stripped naked and put dead people's ashes all over their body and prayed to the flame mother, which ended up being Moldaver. That's the person that they were playing to.
I
um
still don't understand what was happening.
I don't understand what was going on with that, and why they were
The
so
Flame Mother or
secretive.
something like that, or
Yeah, and I didn't understand why they were so secretive of what
The
happened on
food.
level 12, because clearly they know that people were experimented on in the past, and what they look like now is the result of that. So the fact that they were so concerned over making sure that nobody saw what was on level 12 didn't really make a lot of sense. They could have easily just said, the people before us, they did some shitty things. We stopped doing that, and now we're just trying to live our lives the way they are. So really made no difference that they were trying to hide their past. I didn't quite understand that. Um,
Yeah,
but
I think that's just for a twist, right? Because you think that the people in the vault are responsible for terrible things, and she does too, obviously, but
right.
turns out they turned on those scientists and now they don't do that stuff. So
Yeah. So it didn't make any sense that they needed to hide their past. Like it wasn't anything that they were doing. They stopped what was doing it. So
It's also that
it should,
comedic moment where you think they're going to kill her and we're going to
yeah. I
they're
suppose that could
letting
be
you back
it
out to
as
the
well.
surface, and then he brings the knife and starts cutting. It's all for a comedic beat.
yeah,
Right.
basically.
So the big part of this episode though was we're back in 2077 before the bomb. Uh, has been asked to go to a meeting by a friend of his with some people that are kind of against what the Vault Tech people are doing, including his wife. So he decides to hear them out. But this is where we're introduced to Moldaver, who was very much alive 200 years earlier, um, which did they explain that she got herself into a vault as into like a cryo chamber as well,
Yeah,
or
I don't think that's explained at all, and that's where
that's not
and
explained
I'm
at
like, I
all?
don't know who can live, how they live so long, and
Right.
that's where I
So
was.
so
The
she
idea
was
of
there in
clones were
2070.
starting to run through my mind, like, oh,
Yeah.
please don't be clones, please don't be
Yeah.
clones.
So she was there in 2077 talking about her cold fusion plan, and which was brushed aside. Um, and then she kind of asks him to spy on his wife just to see if he can learn the truth of what's happening, because he's not quite buying what Moldaver is saying, but he does have a little bit of suspicions with his wife. There was a scene earlier, I can't remember which episode it was, where he's having a meal with her, and she's talking about her daughter, their daughter, maybe having to say goodbye to their dog because there's no dogs allowed, and he doesn't understand why there's no dogs, and she seems to be a little callous about it, and he starts getting a little suspicious about what's going on. And
I
I was
didn't
very
think of the dog
suspicious of her
stuff.
as
Yeah,
well.
there's a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
dog
very
stuff.
very heavy dog things in this
I didn't
show.
think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Isn't
But
there
they know what
I
people
think this
like.
I think this is where the show gets real, like, much better, especially with like the spying on the wife because he doesn't want to, and he's
Right.
kind of doing it reluctantly. And this is where we get some between episode 7 and episode 8, much better, like simultaneous reveals and editing and hearing things in the past and seeing, uh, getting revelations in the present simultaneously, and everything finally comes together to some degree in episode 7 and then ultimately in episode 8. And this is where the show really rebounded for me, especially like finding out that, you know, his wife was in on it, and like what's going to presumably drive season 2 with the, like, where's his family and what's going on with his family is now the new mystery going into season 2, that I think, uh and why the Ghoul and Lucy would team up and their motivations are starting to align, which I think is
Yeah.
also really interesting. So I really liked episode 7 and 8. It started to get way better around now.
Yeah. And so I guess we might as well just talk about those. Sean, did you have anything to add about all the weird stuff in vault number
Oh, are we still on
4
6? This is
with Chris Parnell?
Yeah, we've been kind of jumping
That's all right. We were
across
just
them,
about to
but
jump into number 7.
so on the Chris Parnell thing, just talking about the effect of the eye again. That was one of the effects. Like for the most part, the effects were quite good in the show. That was one that was like kind of shaky for me. I don't know. Like at
Yeah.
first it was good, but like it was weird. Like in the, I think maybe the follow-up episode, it seemed like his eye was always closed almost. Like you could barely even see it. Like I don't know. It was kind of weird how they
Yeah, I guarantee
Okay.
there's like, well, this is what it would actually be like for a human to have a Cyclops eye, but in practice, it doesn't really work for me either.
Like
No,
I did.
like while I was watching it, I was kind of like closing one eye and kind of looking at it, and because it was blurry at some points, and you're right, like sometimes it looked like it was always closed. Like they just said, well, just close the eye because it doesn't look right.
Yeah, I read something that the big breakthrough for them how to make it work was to have the two eyebrows instead of one because he only has
Right.
one eye, but he has two eyebrows. But yeah, I don't know. Still something about it didn't quite work for me. But
I
yeah, I
agree.
mean, that again, like I do like that they have the kind of dual conspiracy things going on where it's like Norm's investigating stuff in the current time period, and then we're getting the flashbacks to Cooper learning stuff in the past. And I guess one thing I don't know if we mentioned, but like I think Cooper also had that friend or whatever who they had a conversation at some point where he basically was hinting at like what was the fiduciary responsibilities or whatever, and how basically Vault-Tec as a corporation, has to basically do what they can to make their vaults valuable, and so hinting that they're going to force a war to happen.
Right. Yeah. So the beginning of episode 7 is kind of the end of the Vault 4 stuff, where it looks like Lucy's about to be executed, but they have the gag where she's just expelled from Vault, and Chris Parnell has this giant machete, and he comes down. It looks like he's gonna like chop her head off, but he brings it down and he just cuts off her leather bands, and everybody cheers when he cuts through them. And um, at this point, uh, Maximus has decided he thinks that she's going to be killed, so he decides to go into action, ditch the robe and the bowl of popcorn, and he steals the Vault 4's reactor to power up the suit, and he comes in guns a blazing and beats the shit out of these people after they've already decided that they're just going to leave and let them go. So they leave, and Lucy convinces Maximum to give them back their nuclear reactor, and so the suit is just left there, and they again continue on to go catch up with Thaddeus and the head, who that son of a bitch has put the dog into like a cooler and closed the lid on it. Again, more dog torment as I was getting furious watching this show. Um, but so we looked at he has called the Brotherhood to come pick him up and explain everything that's happened. Um, and Maximus says, "Well, dude, you just had your foot healed up," which was a pretty gruesome scene when that wacky serum doctor who was fucking the chickens fixed his foot. Which is whenever you use this stuff again, this is what turns you into a ghoul eventually. And so Maximus says they're going to kill you when they get here because you're part ghoul and they're going to know. So Thaddeus takes off. They decide to pull a switcheroo, and Maximus is going to take a different a decapitated head and bring it back to the Brotherhood of Steel. And is that right? Is it called Brotherhood of Steel?
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I thought I got it wrong there. I thought it was the Brotherhood of Metal, but no, Steel is right. So Lucy takes the real head and continues on her journey. Maximus goes back with the Brotherhood and convinces him to not kill him, uh, but to keep him on and let him go fight, and they can finish off their battle against Moldaver and the rest of the people who are causing all of these problems. Uh, so uh, we go back to 2077 at the end of this episode. Uh, Moldaver reveals that she had developed this thing that would uh, power all of Los Angeles, and make water fresh and just make everything great. Uh, but like you said earlier, like the Vault-Tec people realize that their vaults aren't going to be worth anything, so they decide to um, uh, destroy um, Shady Sands themselves, and in the future to get rid of that technology. And so this is when I think Howard kind of realizes that his wife really is in deep and stuff, because he can't um, like he just can't believe that she is on board with this company, and that they might be the ones to actually set off the bomb
Well, she says we'll
themselves.
drop the bomb.
Yeah, she says we'll drop the bomb, and he hears that, and that's kind of the conclusion of the episode that sets us into the final episode. And a pretty great scene that he's listening to it. We also see Kyle MacLachlan back in 2077 as well. Um, and so we kind of know that he's been around that long, and just the fact that it's his own wife that has suggested that they be the ones to drop the bomb to begin with is pretty crazy. And then we get into like the final episode,
Uh,
which
there's
when
there's one other really important part there where I think it's this episode where Norm is going into Vault 31 for the first time.
right, that's at the very end.
The
Yeah.
end of this episode where and you're like, that's the cliffhanger. Like, what did he see? And
Yes.
that part I was like, okay, I feel like he's gonna see a clone of someone or something like that. And I was
Right.
actually really pleased in episode 8 when it was something completely different.
Yeah. So oddly enough, like, so Lucy and Norm in the last episode each kind of figure out what exactly happened way back then, like independently of each other. Norm figures it out because he stumbles on Vault 31, which is completely empty except for a little robot with a human brain in it. Um, and he kind of discovers that um, all of these people back in 2077 had got themselves spots in this one vault, and most of them are cryogenically frozen or suspended animation or whatever you want to call it. And that his father was one of those people who was alive back in 2077. He realized that he had been lied to this whole time, and that they were the ones that were controlling everything. The current overseer of 33, Betty Leslie Uggams, like, she was there in 2077 as well. And so all this stuff that Norm is learning on his own independently of Lucy, uh, who she gets the head to Moldaver of her little compound. I think it's like a planetarium or something.
Observatory, I think.
And yeah, that's it. And so she gives the head over, and they pull out the thing to complete her cold fusion process. And Moldaver just explains everything that Lucy's father had been up to, and how he left their mother out there to die. And you realize that their mother is a ghoul, and she's there kind of strapped to this chair. Um, 200 years, or not 200 years later, but 20 years later, after Shady Sands had been destroyed, that she'd been a ghoul this entire time and just kind of stuck there. So all this stuff is getting into Lucy at the same time that the Brotherhood of Steel has shown up as well, and they're having this massive battle outside. And then we get a cool scene when the ghoul shows up. And earlier on he had talked about being, when he was the actor, uh being someone that wore uh the prototypes of these metal suits, and he said that there was a flaw in them. And the guy he was telling to that there was a flaw, this guy named Bud, who also happened to be the brain inside that little robot, um he just kind of brushed him off. And so now he's fighting against these things, against these giant robots, and realizes that they still do in fact have that same flaw. So he's able to take him out with his gun. And they have a cool scene in the dark, where he's taking out all the
Only
giant
borrowing from
robots.
the Batman a bit. The
Yeah,
Batman.
a little bit of the Batman stuff, yeah, for sure. But a very cool scene. And through all of that, Maximus shows up, and he thinks he's there to rescue Lucy. And she tells him that it was her father that blew up Shady Sands. And through this confusion, Hank has jumped into a discarded uh, steel suit, and just kind of crushes Maximus, knocks him out cold, and takes off. The ghoul shows up, and he tells Lucy, said, "You know what? Just we're gonna go after him. I want to see if my family's still alive. Let's go chase him and continue our journey that way." And they kind of leave Maximus unconscious there. He wakes up just in time to see Moldaver, who's like critically wounded, set cold fusion in motion, and Los Angeles lights up for the first time in 20 some odd years or however long it had been that they haven't had any power. And she dies. The Brotherhood show up. They think that Maximus had killed their enemy, and they say all hail Knight Titus, and so, or Knight Maximus. So sort of a happy ending for Maximus as he's kind of left alone and Lucy's gone. And we see later on Lucy going off with the ghoul and the dog in search of her father. And then we see Hank wandering through the desert, and it's like this camera shot pans up over him, and you see, I think, what was the remnants of Las Vegas. It looked like the Space Needle and all that stuff was in there in the middle of the desert. So that's kind of where the season ended. A great climactic final episode. A lot of the mysteries were solved. We got an explanation on pretty much everything, and now we're just kind of geared for season 2. Everybody has all the information, and we're gonna hopefully go forward with their journey going forward and finding her father, and I don't know, maybe just make him pay for the crimes that he committed. And then I'm assuming they'll take that information back to 33. They got to figure out what's going to happen to Norm. Norm's locked in 31 all by himself with no food, and his only option is to jump into one of those chambers himself. We don't know what his decision is. So a wrap up of a lot of storylines, but a bunch of cliffhangers, which pretty much means that I'm kind of going to be into season 2 if there is a season 2. Has it already been confirmed that
got
there'll be a
announced
season 2?
before it even went live on season 1.
Oh, okay. So great. So we'll get a season 2 eventually. But yeah, like overall, I thought it was a pretty good series. Some good action, some really good characters, people that I really enjoyed following their stories. I enjoyed how like the series had a great beginning and a great ending. Super exciting, super interesting. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed the way that the show wrapped up. Sean, what were your thoughts on the last couple of episodes?
Yeah, I thought it wrapped up pretty well. I'm curious. I think one of the other kind of outstanding questions moving forward is like what happened to Cooper's family.
Right, right.
Because I don't really trying to think if we know what happened in between there.
Right. Like we know the bomb exploded and then everybody kind of scattered.
But
He
I
took
think,
off on a horse.
but he was, I think, with his daughter when the bomb exploded, but not with his
Right,
wife.
right.
So yeah, not too sure what exactly happened there, but
So
yeah,
possibly like they're both in one of those cryogenic chambers. So he
maybe
doesn't know.
yeah.
So that's kind of what he wants to find out.
And the hint of Vegas at the end there is a game, Fallout New Vegas, so I assume that's gonna become something. Uh, and I do like how they leave it again with Maximus still having to kind of hide or kind of having this false, like, he's not who they think he is, or he didn't do what they think he did, which is going to continue forward into the next season. And yeah, a couple other points just overall on the show, but I don't know, Frank, did you have finale
No,
thoughts?
I all I kept thinking about is the terrible ways they were going to end it. Like I mentioned before, clones. And I was pretty satisfied with how everything pulled together and the explanations, the kind of double. I was still confused going into the last episode, even with Maximus. Like there was still, because you see the initial bomb that happens in 2077, but then there's been more bombs, and I didn't understand. Like, am to me, it wasn't clear at that point the nature of time and when those bombs were happening. Is Maximus actually really old as well? Like that's the stuff I wasn't 100% sure about until this last episode. So everything kind of made sense in those final moments. And just, I've said it already, but production design, like all the Fallout tech, the cold fusion machine, all the weapons, the special effects were not amazing for the ships coming in from the Brotherhood of Steel. They were okay, but the drama of Lucy and the what actually happened to her mother and father being there in that scene. Even like the fact that her mother was a ghoul, and like you've already met her line. She's here right now. Like I thought that stuff was pretty a pretty big deal to
Hmm.
wrap up the where the mother is in that moment in that way. That's like pretty pretty bold, I would say. So I thought the way it wrapped up was great. I do ultimately wish it was less about the overarching plot, and I wish each episode was a little more compelling, but I agree with what Greg said. There's 4 or 5 major questions that have been raised for season 2. And the fact that they're going to Vegas already for new Vegas stuff is, I think this show walks a pretty good line of like accelerating things when it has to and moving on from ideas. Although we all criticized kind of the middle of this season to some degree, which I think is fair. It's I'm really excited to see where it goes in season 2.
Yeah, and I
We
think
should say also that Lucy did at the end put her mother out of her
Yes.
misery as well, which was kind of a big character development of being able to do that to her. I mean, again, what was left of her mother, just giving her that final bit of peace, I guess, but kind of put that, the check mark on the complete change in character from 8 episodes earlier of who Lucy was when we first met her.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think I'm glad it was 8 episodes. Like, I don't, I feel like that's a good sweet spot, especially for me to want to get into a new show. 10 episodes, it's only like if I'm really into it or really interested in a show. 12 episodes is a big ask now. There's just so many shows,
Hmm.
but 8 is good. Uh, so, and it does keep the pace moving quite a bit. I am personally still a little more interested in the stuff that's happening at the surface than the stuff in the vaults. So I'm hoping we'll get back to more of that stuff. Like I think I can't remember what episode it was, but the one with the fiends where they're like crossing the bridge and there's a bit of tension there. I like that stuff. Just the fact that anyone you meet in the wasteland probably has an ulterior motive, and that's always kind of interesting, I think. So just a couple points on the video, like this being a video game adaptation. Forgot to mention, I think in episode 2, I don't know if you noticed this, Frank, or if you agree, but the some of the gunfight stuff seemed like it was maybe trying to evoke the VAT system a little bit
Yeah.
with the slow-mo.
Well, the ghouls bullets, I rewatched the second episode. It seems like they're designed to enter. There's definitely a slow-mo of some bullets in the Philly scene where like that's calling back to VATS. So for Greg and other listeners, VATS is like you can slow down time in this game and decide to target limbs and other body parts with higher percentage rates depending on your skills. So that's where like shooting the foot is definitely a callback to VATS and like targeting certain body parts, even the VATS targeting of the armor that Greg mentioned at the end. Without actually like always like doing a VATS kind of grid, those are pretty good references to the VATS system. And I think sound effect wise, and his bullets have a bit of a delay because when you would kill people in VATS, it would go into slow mo at least, and then like some like there was an effect or a polish when you killed someone in VATS that the bullets of the ghoul kind of speak to that to me. So I think like it did a really good job of just integrating ideas from the show somewhat seamlessly. And I think the Pit Boy and all the screens that are a huge part of Fallout, all that stuff was done really well too. Like to me, this is the best video game adaptation I've ever seen.
I mean, definitely in
And
terms of visuals and kind of bringing some of the gamey stuff into the world,
But
it
not in a
did really
cheesy
well.
way, like in a way that works in the context of the show. And
Yeah.
I know people they released a uh current gen upgrade to Fallout 4 and it was like the most downloaded game I think recently. It actually made me want to go back and play Fallout games because I really love the world. I was just never that into the gameplay. And I think it's interesting that this show is kind of doing a better job of making the world more compelling than the game did, But to be fair, all of these ideas are in the game. I just find, when you're playing the game, it's buried in some document you pick up on a table that would take you a minute to read or some conversation. And this show does such a good job of just abbreviating all those ideas and consolidating it down into like the best parts. So I think this series is a huge win.
Yeah, I think the most recent game was like what, 5 years ago or something. So like they're seeing a huge bump in interest in Fallout now. So
Microsoft has got to be fucking losing their minds. So happy that Fallout's popular again after
yeah,
Starfield kind of was not that well received, and now they're like, okay, I guarantee they're pumping in
Fallout
whatever
5
money they have into Fallout 5.
is coming real soon. Yeah. The other thing I just really wanted to mention quickly, I've seen some people discussing this, and I think it is probably intentional. Just the idea that the show captures a bit of the kind of side quest nature of the game, where it's like you set out to do one thing, but then you get sidetracked and you have to do some other thing, and you keep crossing paths with people, and like even the part where Maximus is trapped in the suit of armor, and Lucy comes along and saves him. Like it seems hard to believe. Like he seems like she would barely have been able to hear him. And the fact that she even goes and investigates this abandoned suit of armor seems a bit like, would she really even do that? But like, it's just in games, coincidences happen, things, people cross paths with you multiple times, and it's just kind of feels like a video game. So
I do.
Um,
I know this is intentional, but there's a fourth wall kind of nod that like quests advance at the pace you choose them to advance in those types of games. Like they very rarely expire. You can miss quests, but if you go to a side quest, the main quest is always there. So even the nature of how people live for 200 years and time seems to be like its own version in this world, I think makes sense for a video game show.
yeah.
there was one thing I wanted to ask you guys about from the show, that one of the things that I was a little unsure of. I think I had an idea what happened. So I mentioned the Jello cake earlier that Norm was delivering to the prisoners, and there was one scene where um, one of the I guess like security people was saying all these prisoners are getting the Jello cake, and he had handed a couple out and said that she could take the rest if she wanted. So she kind of wheeled the rest of the Jello cakes away, and it was right before um, there was a scene where one of the prisoners essentially told Norm that he doesn't understand everything that's happened up there, um, and things that he knows aren't really true, which kind of starts him on his like snooping quest. But later on, we find out that all of the guards have been poisoned. Not the guards, the prisoners had been poisoned because there was, I think they said cyanide or arsenic in the Jello cake, and then security was hauling away the woman that took the rest of the Jello cakes from him in the previous episode. Like, did Norm set her up? Like, did he poison the prisoners knowing that they would die and then set up that woman? Or when he went to talk to Chet later on, and he was talking to Chet's wife, the blonde girl with the eye patch, and she had this weird look on her face when she said, "Oh, so terrible what happened to those prisoners," because she was in agreement with Norm that she wanted them dead because they had killed her husband. So I wasn't sure if maybe she did something with the Jello cake, but again,
I
somebody
wasn't sure
somebody
either.
somebody ruined that delicious Jello cake and put arsenic in it, and the prisoners died. But I wasn't sure who did it. If someone got framed, they didn't quite fully explain all that. But I don't know if you guys had an
I
idea
guess
there.
I kind of thought it was Norm. I thought I missed something too, but you're I can't remember that character's name. Kind of makes sense that she might have done it. But I think the fact that it gets blamed on the other person is just, a lucky coincidence for them. I don't think they planned it, or whoever did it planned it to work out that way.
Stephanie is the pregnant resident who was with Chet now, who had the eye patch. Her name was Stephanie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Who ended up again was also from 31, and who ended up being named interim overseer of the new 32. So again, more 31 people being put in charge. Maybe she's part of it as well. We don't know. But lots of stuff that hopefully will get revealed in season 2. So let's give some ratings, and we'll go Frank. What's your rating out of 5?
I mean, it's probably a 4.25. Feels like the right rating for me, but I just love the look of it, and I think it is the best version of a video game adaptation that I can think of. So I'm going to bump up to a 4.5.
I'll give it a 4. And Sean, what about you?
I'm going to give it a 4 as well. I know there's a lot of talk comparing this to The Last of Us and which is a better adaptation. And I mean, they are very different in terms of one is a direct adaptation of a story from a game, and whereas Fallout is a new story set in the universe of a game. I think I do prefer The Last of Us. Uh, just like it just feels like a stronger, kind of more cohesive show, but Fallout was a lot of fun and definitely better than I expected it to be. So looking forward to
What
another season.
what percentage of like these RPG games are post-apocalyptic world games? It
Tough to
seems like lots of them.
There's a
There's quite a
lot,
few.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of TV shows and movies not based on video games that are post-apocalyptic
Yeah.
recently too. So it's just a lot of that out there right now.
All right, so let's jump into our superlatives, and we can start with our top fives. I'll go first. Number 5 would be the gulper and the look of the gulper. I also liked how fast the gulper could swim. Number 4, I would say the FX for the nuclear explosion in episode 1. I liked how it was just like the smoke with the fireball coming out the top, and then like the I don't know, I guess like the explosion like breaking the sound barrier sent that pulse, which shattered all the glass and knocked everybody for a loop. I thought that was really cool looking. Uh, uh, Number 3, I like the design of most of the handheld weapons. I thought all the guns looked great. Number 2, I love the music. I like the music choices. I didn't quite understand why that was popular music. Um, but like a lot of the artists like Buck Owens, and there was a ton of Johnny Cash in it, and but like all these classic old west, old country, roots country songs that played throughout the show. I thought was super interesting, and I really enjoyed that. And number 1, just in general, Walton Goggins. Sean?
I just
Uh,
want to say this is a big part of the Fallout show or game, pardon me. I've never been big on the music. Like even in like it's the same type of music in the game. I don't get it. I think the show did a better job of like when it would mix in, like you said, Johnny Cash and some other elements. I just was kind of wishing here and there it would mix it up with music a bit more.
yeah, I liked it because it's, obviously just kind of a different vibe for, science fiction, post-apocalyptic type stuff. But by the end, I was starting to feel like it's a little predictable. Anytime there's an action scene, it goes to slow motion set to this some sort of 50s song. Like I just feel like that formula or template's going to get a bit tired if they continue doing that in upcoming seasons. So yeah, I hope they switch it up a little bit maybe, but
It's all hair metal in season 2.
yeah. Um, okay, my number 5, we didn't really talk about this, but there's some funny exchanges between Lucy and Maximus with regards to sex, which
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I
He's
don't
like,
totally
huh?
like I don't totally know if it like is he like I would think if anything the Vaulties might be kind of naive and not know anything about sex, although I guess they're repopulating the planet, so maybe not. But it just seemed odd that Maximus didn't know this stuff, but it was funny, like particularly when he just multiple times blurted out something about his cock, and it was just like, what the hell? But that was good. Number 4, Walton Goggins. Like I said, the character early on, I was like, I've seen this before, but I just really got into that character and his performance. Number 3, the Brotherhood of Steel. I feel like I don't totally understand this organization, but what I've seen of it, I just find fascinating. Like it's got kind of this religious angle to it. They're also kind of supposed to be, cleaning up the wasteland and enforcing some rule of law, but they're also obviously corrupt to some degree. And I just, yeah, like the mech suits and the voice effects on the mechs and everything. It just more Brotherhood. I'll be happy if they keep adding more in
I
future
thought that
seasons.
they were I thought that they were tied in with the Vault people as well, but like we learned that Maximus didn't even realize that people were living in the vaults. So I thought that they were like some sort of a like an army that was hired by the people who are now in the vaults to just maintain order up on top, but I guess not.
Yeah, I don't know in the games if there's an explanation there, but I'm assuming we'll get more history on that organization in the future seasons as well. Number two, I'm just going to say production design in general, just a lot of the gadgets and the tech and the look of the vault and the jumpsuits and everything just looks great and straight out of the games. And number one, I'm just going to say episode two. It was just a great episode, so much interesting stuff going on, and I kind of hope they kind of hit that high point again in the next season.
Frank?
My number 5, the foot replacement technology in episode 2, where the teeth eat up the remaining leg and spit out the blood and then plug it in. Number 4, doing the wanted poster for let's see, Ben Linus on Lost, where it's like graph paper where they just shade in parts of
Oh
it.
yes, yes, yes,
I thought
yes.
that was a really cool idea. I
I,
love.
I I also enjoyed how there was a wanted poster for the dog as well.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was a really neat idea. Um, Walton Goggins as the ghoul. Number 3. Number 2, the cinematography. I love the look of the show. And number 1, something we have not mentioned at all yet, the title cards for the show always being a different effect on the title Fallout, whether it's bullet holes being shot in it, it evaporates into sand in one, radiation stuff. It's kind of like The Simpsons, always doing a different intro. It's always a different presentation of the word Fallout, which I thought was very interesting and classy and very well done. I absolutely could not wait to see what they did with the Fallout title each episode.
Um, was any of this shot on location, or was it all like in studio with sets and then
I
special
think
effects?
there's a lot of location stuff.
There is some location stuff. I actually read, I didn't realize this originally, but I guess they used the volume, or not the volume, but the same kind of tech that they do for the Star Wars stuff
Oh,
for a
really?
lot
For
of
the
stuff.
lighting?
Yeah. So the LED screens and everything.
Cool.
Look good.
All right, let's go into our favorite secondary character, and we'll start with Frank this time.
I think I have like CX404. I like the idea of it's kind of like between the dog and the head getting passed around and how all these characters intertwine. I kind of, and I liked the montage of him raising CX404 at the beginning too, when he saved him and bumped up his number to 10. I thought that was pretty good.
Sean, what about you?
Well, I'm going with I guess a more obscure character who was only in one episode, but I'm going with Ma June, which I think she was she ran the general store
Yeah.
or whatever it was
Oh yes.
in the one town. Just something about like I thought she was pretty funny, and then there's that other character she yells at all the time, and I don't know, just I had a good time with that character.
Oh, that was her. I don't know. I don't think it was her husband, but somebody that she was definitely. Yeah, that's right. Um, one of the other um, interesting casting choices as uh, one of the New California Republic Rangers that was serving under Moldaver. Like so, a police officer in California. They cast Eric Estrada,
Was
who was
that,
the
is that who
star
it
of
was? I didn't even
who was the
recognize.
star of Chips, which
Wow,
I thought was pretty interesting casting as well.
Ooh, I did not catch that.
Yeah,
nice.
no love for John, just for Punch. Um, yeah, my favorite secondary character was also CX404. Um,
Played
um,
Lana 5, I believe, is the dog's name.
uh, the appearance of Fred Armisen as the DJ. He was essentially himself talking about music. If you've ever seen an interview where Fred Armisen talks about music, that's exactly what he was. So it wasn't much of a stretch of acting, but it was kind of funny.
I did like the gag of him listening to those tapes or whatever they were that sounded terrible and like saying,
Yes.
"Actually sounds better," like how people talk about vinyl and stuff like that. I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty funny.
The mids, I think he said.
Yeah,
You get the bass and you get the treble and then you get the mids. Um, and then recasting choices, and then we'll start with Sean.
So I'm going to recast Fred Armisen.
No.
Not that I don't like, he was kind of funny, but he also pulled me out of the world a little bit. I was like, this doesn't look like a guy who's been living in the wasteland. So I'm throwing out, I was trying to think of somebody music related that could be this DJ. And
A former DJ that you might know personally?
well, wasn't going with the gas man, but I was thinking this popped into my head, Iggy Pop. I feel like he looks like he belongs in the wasteland. I
Yeah.
don't know if he's ever been in a post-apocalyptic movie or not, but
Pro City of Angels, does that count?
I guess maybe.
I was just looking it up during the regular show today, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot he was in that. So
Hey, if the Postman can have Tom Petty in their movie, they can have Iggy Pop for sure. Um, my choice for recasting is I would recast Kyle MacLachlan, and it's actually funny because I did this earlier today, and before this we recorded Film Junk, and where we talked about Fall Guy, and uh, and Jay out of nowhere briefly mentioned an actor that I had chosen to recast as Kyle MacLachlan, and that is fellow '80s actor Bronson Pinchot, but not his as his Balky Bartakamus character, more of his Beverly Hills Cop character of Surge.
Hmm. Okay.
is this the first time you haven't used Jim Parsons?
No,
Okay, all right, okay.
I retired Jim Parsons last episode.
Oh, okay, okay. All right.
Yeah.
My recasting is I'm recasting Johnny Pemberton as the squire. A little bit too much of a comedic vibe.
Which Squire? Thaddeus?
Thaddeus, yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, who am I going to cast? I need a young actor. And then I looked up Johnny Pemberton, and he's 41 years old.
Oh,
I thought he was like in the late 20s or something like that. It's pretty old. So I'm going to go with Dane DeHaan, continue the DeHaanaissance.
Nice.
nice. Nice. Uh all right. Well, thanks for jumping on this episode and doing a combo game junk, TV junk episode. It's always a good time to discuss video game stuff with you guys, whereas I get to rely on you guys as the experts when normally when we're doing like Star Wars or Marvel stuff, I'm usually the one with all the answers, especially when it comes to the Marvel movies. So
Or the
it's nice
Fall
to,
Guy.
or the Fall Guy. So it's always nice to get a lot of explanations from you guys for the show. Frank, I normally ask you what's the next game junk, and I know because we're doing it right now. And Sean, you've got a premium film junk coming up.
Yeah, we're doing the new Planet of the Apes trilogy ahead of the upcoming release of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
So you did the originals before. Did Mark Wahlberg's make an appearance in any of these premiums?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
It was in the first one?
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. I just want to make sure you guys didn't leave that
No,
atrocity.
You gotta get in there.
You got to make sure that one stays in there for sure.
Tuberculosis. Is it tuberculosis? Is that correct? Am I saying it? Yeah,
Yep,
it's always, I love that Planet of the Apes movie.
you do.
Sure.
All right.
I love Tim Burton.
What's next for ball junk? Basketball. We didn't watch much. Pelicans and Lakers, both first round losers.
We shall
Not
see.
caring about the NBA anymore.
Yeah, maybe we'll think of something. for
I'm sure there'll
Midsummer.
be
What
something.
about golf? You guys got to start doing some golf episodes.
Probably watch more golf than any other sport than football these days.
I don't know. Maybe I got to watch that Challengers movie you were talking about in the other podcast.
Possibly.
Uh,
Yeah.
Sports.
It is my favorite sports movie now, so it's bold.
We can always do The Boys in the Boat.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for checking out this episode, and we'll see you for episode 29, and that'll be Shogun. Thanks for listening.